Well, you're looking at the MVP favorite in what might be a pretty crazy year to be an MVP favorite. Checking the odds on Monday morning, Brock at 3-1 has the best odds to win the MVP. Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott at 3.5-1, Jalen Hurts the same, Lamar Jackson, Tua, Mahomes, Tyreek, Stroud, Trevor Lawrence. There you go. The guy that on Sunday in Philadelphia was 70% completion, 314 yards, 4 touchdowns. Um, fair amount of yak, some big plays, but that's the way this offense has been built, and nobody has run this offense this well in 7 years. I mean, whatever that version was with Matt Ryan when he was the MVP in Atlanta for Kyle Shanahan. But Brock Purdy is now on pace for 32 and a half. Let's call it 33 touchdowns, 8.5. We'll call it 9. We'll be fair. We'll round them both up. 33 and 9. His team has a shot. Now it really feels like, given the way they just beat Philly, to finish 14 and 3. Maybe be the 1 seed. We'll see what happens next week with Philadelphia and Dallas. But it's pretty wild. You're talking to somebody who thought for a while that Christian McCaffrey was undervalued. McCaffrey had a great day on Sunday, but it's just really hard for running backs. And so the question is, A, how crazy would it be for Brock to win the MVP? And B, if he were to win the MVP, how crazy is this? If you ever have a second-year quarterback and that guy wins the MVP, I mean, if he's the number 1 pick or the last pick in the draft, your season is almost automatically a wild success. Everyone's fired up about your franchise. The future is bright. There's really nothing more you could have asked for. Your second-year quarterback just won the MVP. How great is life? But as we know, this Niner team has the goal of winning the Super Bowl. And so they're in the very rare position of having a guy who's playing well enough to win the MVP, the last pick in the draft. Maybe you found your franchise quarterback. And that even still would not feel like a complete season because the goal was so much bigger. So we've had 3 MVPs in year 2 out of the quarterback position. Lamar Jackson did it. Mahomes did it. And the one that to me kind of feels like the Niners, Dan Marino did it. Now, I don't remember it. I wasn't alive for it. As I've learned when I put up classic Montana throws, many of you were. So you can fill in the blanks here. But what's interesting about that year, 1984, Miami lost to the 49ers in the Super Bowl that year. If you thought the Niners were favorites this year, and they weren't favorites, but the Niners were on the short list of Super Bowl winners at 10-1. Miami that year, Dan Marino's second year, they were 5-1 to win the Super Bowl. So we'd have to go find a Dolphins fan from 84 maybe, or maybe a Niners fan, or anybody who was just around the league, watching the league in 84. Did that feel like a disappointing year to Miami? They came in, I think, the third best odds to win the Super Bowl that year, 5-1. Their Heisman winning quarterback, they drafted him. He delivered. They went, they had a great season and he won the MVP and they didn't win the Super Bowl. I would imagine at some point in that year, you thought, well, didn't win. I mean, look, we'll win one. Right? That's what Miami thought. Miami thought at the time, we'll win one. And as we all know, Miami did not win one. You know, Lamar, will Lamar win one? Year 2, won the MVP. It was really his first year as a starter, which is usually the way it happens for these guys, right? It's the way it's happened for Brock. It's the way it happened for Mahomes. But Miami never won one. Is Baltimore going to win one? Maybe this is Baltimore's year. Obviously the Chiefs have won, but they didn't win in that year. And it felt very promising for Kansas City at the time. I think what makes it so crazy for the Niners is that it feels like everything has come together with that roster right now, that it's got to happen now. And if he were to win the MVP and you don't win the Super Bowl, I think probably anybody watching this video, everybody in that locker room, you would trade an MVP win for a Super Bowl. But the question is, if he doesn't win the MVP this year, who does? Second in those odds, you go back to it, was Dak. Is Dak going to win the MVP? I don't think so, but maybe. I mean, their numbers are very similar. If you go look at touchdown percentage, Brock's going to lead there because Brock has fewer pass attempts than Dak. If you look at interception percentage, Brock's going to lead there because he has fewer pass attempts. But right now, Dak is the one that leads the NFL in passing touchdowns with 26. Brock is fourth with 23. Both have 6 interceptions. In terms of yardage, they're very close. Brock at 31.85. Dak at 32.34. The ranks on those is probably the better way to do that. Dak is 5th and Brock is 7th in the league. These are not historically MVP numbers. It feels a little bit to me like what the college football season felt like even a couple of months ago, when I was pretty confident that one of the 2 Pac-12 teams was going to get in. Now, I can't take any credit for that prediction because Washington went undefeated. They didn't have to go do battle with Texas or Alabama or Florida State at the bottom of the rankings. But one thing was clear over the course of the college football season pretty quickly, which was there was not like a single dominant team. Georgia was ranked number 1, but they lost in their conference championship game to an Alabama team that had to pull it out of their ass against Auburn, and Auburn's not very good. So Washington's unbeaten. I like them against Michigan. I think I like them against Texas. I think Alabama would be their toughest matchup, and they might get that. I think they're going to get that. I think it's going to be Washington and Alabama in the national championship game. But it kind of feels like that year where you looked up and went, is anybody historically dominant? I mean, Washington was unbeaten. Georgia was unbeaten. We'll see. Somebody wins the championship, and then in hindsight, maybe their season looks different. Like if Washington were to beat, Texas and Bama or Texas and Michigan, maybe it'd feel that way. But when you look at what the projected numbers for the MVP are this year, let's use Brock as the example. The numbers we started with: 33 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, or 32-8, however you want to look at it. If it's Dak, it'd be a little higher. But the last 5 years, the MVP has thrown on average 43 touchdowns. Okay. I just gave you a projection of Brock at 33, has thrown 43 touchdowns and 8 picks. I just gave you a projection of Brock at 9. So you haven't had a quarterback win the MVP, or any player win the MVP, but it's quarterbacks. You haven't had a quarterback win the MVP with 33-9 or 32-8 since 2017, when Tom Brady won the MVP with exactly 32 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. The Patriots went 13-3 and lost to Philadelphia in the Super Bowl. Philly special. And remember what happened that year. That year was kind of a weird MVP year. Carson Wentz kind of felt like the front runner at the time until he broke his leg against the Rams. Didn't finish the season, and Nick Foles took over. The rest is history, and they were happy to have the Super Bowl MVP instead of the regular season MVP. So that year's, I think, a really good comp. I think 2017 is a really good comp for what's going on in the NFL this year, where it looked like maybe Burrow was going to turn it up, got hurt. You look at the stats, you're like, well, it's not going to be Stroud. It's not going to be Sam Howell. Probably not going to be Tua as hot as he started. That's tapered off. Goff, Josh Allen's not having a great year. Patrick Mahomes' team is 8-4. Herbert's 5-7. Jalen Hurts went, Jalen Hurts, I thought coming into the game, this was going to be a big MVP game. I thought it'd be a Jalen Hurts game. In the sense of if he had a great game, would he be the one that kind of takes hold of the MVP? Didn't happen. So that's why Brock's got better odds right now. And here's the other thing Brock's got going for him. Lamar Jackson is going to be on a lot of people's list, rightfully so. Lamar has Ravens run a bye this week. Lamar has thrown 17 touchdowns, but let me get Lamar's rushing total here. The year Lamar won the MVP, he threw 36, and then also ran 7. So that was a hell of a year. Lamar's thrown 13 touchdowns this year, and I should have had this earlier. Rushed for 5. That doesn't feel to me like about to be the MVP. The year he ran for 7, he threw 36. But, the beauty for Brock's MVP campaign is he's got toe-to-toe win over Hurts. He's got the toe-to-toe domination, the win over Dak, multiple wins over Dak, the win over Trevor Lawrence, which, Trevor's on those odds a little further down. And then he's got the possibility of having a head-to-head with Lamar. So I don't think McCaffrey should be out of it. I think Christian, again had one of those games that just he looked incredible. He looked fantastic. Everything that an MVP is supposed to look like, he looked like. But we know how it works from a quarterback standpoint. And Brock's, when you watch Brock, you also watch a guy that looks like he's in total control and a key part of the domination. So, I don't see it but I saw someone in the chat made a point here. If McCaffrey gets 20 touchdowns or Tyreek gets 2,000 yards, they could be the MVP. I mean, you'd have to think Tyreek is absolutely, if you're going to give McCaffrey an outside shot, you'd have to give Tyreek an outside shot. I give McCaffrey more of a shot than Tyreek personally, because I don't have to say personally, I'm here saying it, because he's doing it in so many of these primetime national TV games on a team that people view as a national championship contender. So a national championship, Super Bowl contender. So I give McCaffrey the edge over Tyreek. But, I'd have a hard time seeing Dak get the votes because he's played like not a tier 1 quarterback so much of his career. I know there's a lot of talk about how much better he's playing right now. And when you look at the numbers are the numbers. Like it's hard to deny if you did a blind resume that Dak would have a legit shot. I mean, there's no doubt. So he has a shot. And, it's pretty crazy if you would put these odds up. Where'd my odds go? If you would put these odds up before the year, that we'd look up one day and Brock Purdy would be the favorite and Dak Prescott would be second. You go, what the hell's going on? That's insane. But here we are. And, it has happened before. The year 2 quarterback has happened before. The year 2 quarterback on a team that's supposed to win the Super Bowl has happened before. That team didn't do it. So, and we know what happened with that team. They never did it. Now, those things are not related. But it just gives you an idea how rare it is to have a team that's that's Super Bowl or bust, right? That's the thing that as I was brushing my teeth this morning, early bird gets the worm, go get her. That really hit me was like, it's hard to imagine a scenario where your second-year quarterback wins an MVP and your team is not satisfied with their season, but that would be the case for this year's team. Let's get a couple of your comments in here. Comment from Farscape Forever. Brock eviscerated Dak and Hurts, number 2 and 3 in the MVP odds. If it doesn't go to Brock, it should go to McCaffrey. At this point, I agree. If I had a vote right now, boy, it'd be tough. But it would be between McCaffrey and Purdy right now. But there's 5 games left. That's a lot of football. And there's head-to-head with Lamar, and you got Seattle on rest this week, which they're not supposed to be a problem for you, but every year the Niners, there's some team that's not supposed to be a problem, posed to be a problem, that poses a problem. So you got a long way to go. The MVP making $800,000. It's crazy how good Brock is. All the haters are not based in reality. Are there any left? I saw a great comment here. This is from Bay Marin. Fun fact, CJ Stroud was drafted 2 picks after Brock. It's a great fact. As always, sponsored by Tito's Handmade Vodka. Tito's Handmade Vodka and Fat Giraffe. I was asked here. Oh, Nick Wright's still a hater. I haven't, it's Monday morning, very early. Haven't seen what Nick Wright's up to today. Noah asks, what's with the new background? Too classy for my man. This is a guest bed in my mother-in-law's home. This is my wife's brother's old room. And it's a free room. So that's where I am right now. And there's a giraffe. Impromptu trip. Thank you for asking. Bed's comfy, though. I mean, I haven't slept on it, but it looks comfy. Yeah, I don't know what Nick Wright's going to say today. Somebody will tell me. Maybe we'll make a video about it. Evil Duck says the CMC or Brock thing is why they won't win, because they'll split the vote and Dak or Jalen will take it. Jalen Hurts can still win it. I mean, if the Eagles are the 1 seed, it's easy today to be like, well, I guess it's over for Jalen. If the Eagles are the 1 seed and they have a 15-2 record, let's say, they're going to play the Cowboys this coming week in a game that will do massive ratings. It'll be one of the most watched television shows in America this year. And if he bounces back after a bad game, then Jalen can absolutely still win the MVP. In fact, I think it's more likely Jalen Hurts wins the MVP than it is then Dak wins the MVP, because that thing probably comes down to Dak can't win the MVP if Jalen Hurts beats him twice over Jalen Hurts. I don't think, because they're going to be a 15-2 1 seed. So, I don't know what's better for Brock's odds, but I have to think about that for a second. But I think in some ways going against Dak would be good for Brock. But on the other hand, I just think it's more likely that Jalen wins it in terms of where the voting is as it relates to Dak. So the good news for Brock, they've beaten both of them head to head. I think it would help. As I'm thinking about it, I think it would help Brock a little. It's tough because Dak is going to be the one that has the similar numbers to him. Jalen's the one that can win more games. Although right now the Niners and Cowboys have the same record, so it's not like the Cowboys are in the Niners' dust, even though we talk about it that way sometimes. But the thinking being, if the Niners get the 1 seed at 14-3, I think maybe that makes it a little easier for Brock to win the MVP. Now, if the Cowboys are the 2 seed with the same record, they just lose the head-to-head tiebreaker, then I could see it. Dak would have a case. But I just think in some ways, having not been in the league so long would work in Brock's favor against Dak Prescott, whereas Dak's trying to overcome all this career where he's not a tier 1 quarterback. He's a really good quarterback. You would take him. Most teams would take him. If you didn't have Brock Purdy, you'd say, go get Dak Prescott. Like the Niners would have been better, right? The Niners could win a championship with Dak. I don't think Dallas can, but the Niners could. There are teams there are scenarios where you could win the championship with Dak. I just don't think the Dallas scenario is one. But I think it could work against them. I know people just assume if you're the Cowboys quarterback, you just always get the benefit of the doubt. But you've played in so many massive games for so long. I don't know. You got to shake the rep, and the rep is a good rep, but it's not a great rep. It's not MVP rep. And in a weird way that might work against him. It's been a weird year, as we illustrated, right? What it's good. The Super Bowl MVP probably won't. I mean, the regular season MVP, if it's a quarterback, probably won't have 14 touchdowns. At least that's the pace. 40 touchdowns. God, I can't talk. The regular season MVP probably will not throw 40 touchdowns this year. That hasn't happened. Lamar threw 36, as I said, but he ran for 7. But like a guy who doesn't run touchdowns, throwing for less than 40 and winning the MVP was Brady in 17. So Dylan hanging 30 plus on 3 or 4 NFC East teams is wild. Washington, we coming for that division. Eric, Debo deserves a lot of credit for taking 5 to 10 yard passes and getting 50 after the catch. I know Brock stands are sensitive, but Debo deserves a lot of credit for those plays. Hell yeah, it does. Debo played like an MVP against Philly after talking a lot of trash, which is, that's what great players do, right? Tito's gets me favored without getting faded without getting hung over. Emotional support giraffe. Yeah. All right. I'm seeing a lot of good comments here, but I don't have time for them because you had a lot of them and I'm short on time. I got to roll. We got to go. But there'll be more content. Don't forget, if you want to take more of this conversation on the go, check out the Haberman and Middlecoff podcast down in the description below. Please go subscribe to that pod. If you are just a YouTube watcher and you haven't checked out the pod, go check out the pod. And if you are here right now, hit that like button. If you're here later, if I'm not doing this video, but you're watching it because you, as the consumer, get to bend time on the internet. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends and your enemies. We always appreciate that. And we'll talk to you soon. From this room, maybe. Bye.